First problem was that their think tanks had told them that China's economy was slowing. China had had a tremendous run of economic growth based on cheap labor, foreign direct investment, and exports. But that nice early run was coming to an end. China had to find a solution to sustain growth into the future. How would they do this? They needed a new playbook. The second problem was that China had become the biggest market for so many different products, including cars, and yet, where were the Chinese brand cars? If you've been to China, you know you go to Shanghai or Guangzhou or Beijing, it's mostly German, Korean, American cars. And the Chinese leaders said, we can put satellites in space, build nuclear weapons, build the longest bridges in the world, high-speed rail. Why don't we have a car to call our own? This isn't right. We've been doing joint ventures for 20 years. We still don't have a car to call our own. So, at the end of 3 days of talks, they formulated and they came to an agreement to do something called Made in China 2025. What's that? Essentially, what it is China determined that the only way forward would be to take global leadership in all of future high tech, including AI, autonomous vehicles, electric vehicles, robotics, advanced manufacturing, you name it. If it was high tech, they would be the leaders. And in this way, they would propel economic growth while also developing their own companies with their own brand names that would be globally known. That's the grand blueprint, the grand strategy behind Made in China 2025. If you think about it, to really reach those goals, you've got to have 4 ingredients: scale, capital, regulation, regulatory support, and technology. Let's look at what China has in its hand. Just vehicle sales alone, you know the story, but even in electric vehicles, China is now way ahead of the United States. 1.2 million units last year, going to 5 million in 2025, and 15 million projected by 2030. China will be the undisputed center of EV production and sales. How about capital? Well, the government, as part of this Made in China 2025 program, developed what they call government guidance funds, through which they channel billions of dollars into select technologies, both within China and abroad, in delivery, in automation, in EVs, and in 5G. You guys all know the name Huawei by now, right? Yeah, they want to take over the world. What about regulation? If you've been to China recently, you'll notice that there are cameras everywhere. In fact, there are now more than 300 million cameras in the People's Republic of China recording everything all the time. Facial recognition, highly sophisticated technology to track people's movements. More importantly for technology, it's a vacuum for data, and data feeds into autonomous driving and a lot of other AI applications. So nowhere else in the world do you have such sophisticated technology tracking the movements of people. They have something called the social credit score. All my friends now have a social credit score. If, for example, your son wants to go to a college but you didn't pay taxes last quarter, they know, oh, your social credit score is down because you didn't pay your taxes, your son can't get into school. They banned more than 1 million people from taking planes and trains last year because their social credit score was too low. They're watching. All right, so they have capital, they have scale, they have regulation. What they haven't had since the days of Adora is technology. And under Made in China 2025, they say, we're no longer going to rely on our traditional automakers to get the job done. What we're going to do is invite our leading tech companies. They're smart, they're cashed up, they're innovative, they're fast-moving, and there they are, known in China as BAT. Baidu, Alibaba, and Tencent are China's powerhouse. Think Google, Apple, and Facebook. They've been encouraged to enter and drive innovation in the auto industry. Now, these tech companies are very globally minded, and they've started to invest globally into Europe, into Israel, and even here into the United States to capture leading talent and leading technologies directly. They're no longer important. They're no longer going to global automakers for next generation technology. They're going direct to source to secure it. Buy it or buy the talent that has the capability to create it for them. Here's a short list of the Chinese companies that have established themselves in California. Some of them will be familiar to you. Baidu, DiDi, NIO, Byton. Of the 50-some companies that are testing autonomous vehicles in California today, 13 of them are Chinese. Why are they there? Because the Chinese tech companies recognize that California is still second to none in terms of next generation technology. All right. Since Made in China 2025 was launched in 2014, that's only 5 short years ago, we're already starting to see the fruits of that policy. And in my mind, there's no better example of it than NIO, this New York Stock Exchange listed company that produces this all-electric SUV 7-seater that has many of the chops, not all the chops, but many of the chops of a Tesla Model X. It goes 0 to 60 in 4.4 seconds. It's got swapping stations where you can change your battery off less than 5 minutes. It's got an AI assistant. If you see up in the right-hand corner with the eyes, that AI assistant takes voice commands for everything in the car except for accelerating and steering and braking. In other words, last time I was in it, I spoke to, her name is Nomi, and I said, please open the sunroof 66%, and the sunroof opened 66%. That's pretty remarkable for a 5-year-old Chinese company that was just an idea. And it's not just electrics. Baidu is the Google of China. It's developed level 4 autonomous buses in conjunction with one of China's leading bus companies. This is a look at it. Obviously, this isn't going to be running in freeway traffic, but for what they call geofenced areas, it's already being deployed in 13 Chinese cities and 1 Japanese city. Ride sharing is another big play in China. Last year, DiDi, which is the Uber of China, delivered 10 billion rides, twice the number of Uber. Just to get an idea of scale, the number 2 at DiDi is a woman, Chinese national, who went to Harvard and spent many years as a Goldman Sachs executive. So what strikes me about these new Chinese tech companies and tech auto companies is that they're led by very well-educated, smart, globally minded people who are not saying, oh, we're going to do this in China alone. We're going to draw from resources globally to make this happen. When they're not innovating on their own or acquiring through talent through California, they're buying. You know, everyone knows by now Volvo belongs to Geely, a Chinese company, but how many are aware that Pirelli is Chinese? Or KUKA Robotics, that leading German robotics company, is Chinese. The single largest shareholder in Daimler, anybody know? Li Shufu, Geely. What a world, what a change. The leading shareholder in Daimler is a Chinese guy who grew up on the farm in Zhejiang province. Yeah, pretty remarkable. You'll remember Chrysler had a joint venture called Beijing Jeep. They produced Jeep Cherokees starting in 1984. And those Cherokees were actually built in Ohio, then put into kits and shipped to Beijing, to the JV. They'd assemble the Cherokees and sell them in the China market. Detroit 3 are vulnerable right now because if China's able to secure technology it needs, remember the kit, without partnerships, then what's the point of having foreign automakers in your backyard? I do believe that the Detroit 3 see this trend toward tech and are building alliances with the tech companies. So Ford's established with Alibaba and Baidu some relationships. I would look for GM to develop Cruise in China. Chrysler needs to sort of maybe do a reset and go in with this branding on the top end again. But you're either going to go premium if you're Detroit, or you're going to move to Autotech, a tech dimension, rather than just conventional. I have a real nice sedan or a small SUV that really goes well. GME or BYD or Great Wall.